P. Diddy is going to become the richest American behind bars. Where in 2022, he celebrated becoming a billionaire, becoming the 9th black billionaire in the United States, and the 4th rapper to become a billionaire behind Kanye West, Jay-Z, and Dr. Dre. But now cut to 2 years later, and times have definitely changed. Cindy Ruella, his former private chef, is now suing him for sexual harassment. Cassie Ventura accused him of raping her, beating her, trafficking her, and also blowing up her boyfriend at the time, Kid Cudi's car. And now the federal government has raided all of P. Diddy's properties, accusing him of running a sex trafficking trade for decades and also having many big names involved. But now the big question is, how long is he going to go to prison if he doesn't manage to bribe his way out? I'm Charles Peralo, and today we're figuring out how long P. Diddy is going to go to jail for. Looking at the origin of P. Diddy, it actually starts out as a pretty sad one, with his father being a former member of the US Air Force but later became a drug dealer living in New York City. And he worked for a very famous gangster and drug dealer named Frank Lucas, and he was killed at the age of 33, with many believing it was because of Lucas's order. And P. Diddy was only 2 years old when this happened, and his mother did work multiple jobs to try and support him. And his mother didn't want him to end up like his father, so she did put him in a more traditional household, having him attend Catholic school and also be an altar boy. And even the origin of why he's called P. Diddy was actually a more wholesome story than people would guess, where many people would say the puff in P. Diddy was a marijuana joke, but in reality it was a nickname his mother gave him because he'd huff and puff when he'd get angry. And that led him to a pretty normal life, where out of high school he went to college attending Howard University, but he dropped out his sophomore year to go into music. And getting into the music industry, he actually didn't start off as a rapper, but worked as a producer, getting a job for Uptown Records in 1990. And he was able to network with a lot of people, where 13-year-old Usher actually moved into him while he was just starting out in the producing world. But even though many people liked working with P. Diddy, Uptown Records decided to fire him just a few years later because they found his attitude a little bit unprofessional, where he was cursing often and would also make casual threats to people, with P. Diddy saying it was just because he didn't fit in a normal corporate environment. And because of that, it inspired the name for his record company that he launched in 1993, which was called Bad Boy Records. And he found early success because he was able to sign on Usher and Mariah Carey early on in their careers, and he also was able to get a deal with Aretha Franklin as well. And then in 1997, he decided he no longer wanted to be just a producer, but instead become a rapper himself, so he launched his rap career going by the name P. Diddy, leaving behind Sean Combs. And his career kept rising and rising from there as a rapper, where in 2004 he was asked to be part of the Super Bowl halftime show. And for the 2000s, he was the 6th highest selling rapper. And outside of the world of rap is where the real money started coming in for him. Because in 1998, he launched his first company outside of the music industry, which was a clothing brand called Sean John, and in 2003, Ronald Burkle invested $100 million into the company. And that company has been around for over 25 years now, doing over $2 billion in sales, and their products have 80 to 90% margins on them. He also moved into the liquor industry, partnering with the vodka brand Ciroc in 2007, becoming a part owner in the company, which was definitely a good time for, because in the late 2000s, the vodka industry grew 500% in the United States. And P. Diddy was personally making $60 million a year off the brand until it was bought out. So because of rapping, producing, clothing, and vodka, it was what led him to become a billionaire, but doing all of this, he was leading a life of crime. And looking at P. Diddy's history with the law, it's kind of the never-ending story where it seems to go on and on and on, but here we go with some of the big ones. With his first arrest happening in 1999 after Nas released a music video that showed P. Diddy being crucified on MTV. And P. Diddy was so angry by that, he went to Nas's manager, Steven Stout's office, where he proceeded to attack him, punching him multiple times and then attacking him with a phone answering machine. And P. Diddy was arrested and charged, but he got out of it by paying Stout $500,000 as a settlement outside of court. And paying a large sum of money to get out of a criminal case set the tone for the rest of P. Diddy's life. And that's because 6 months after that, P. Diddy was charged for another crime, but this one was even bigger. Because P. Diddy went to a nightclub with his girlfriend at the time, Jennifer Lopez, and brought his protege, who was a rapper named Shine, and the two got into a huge fight. And the club was evacuated after gunfire broke out, and P. Diddy was arrested because he had 4 illegal weapons on him, one of which being a gun. And the only reason he didn't serve time was because of his limo driver, Walter Fenderson, making the claim that he was the one who brought the guns and not P. Diddy. And Shine would accuse P. Diddy of trying to bribe Fenderson, saying Fenderson didn't have the weapons but was just taking hush money to make it so he'd take the blame for it. And Fenderson would later sue P. Diddy for emotional stress on the job, and then threatened to actually go out saying they weren't his weapons, so P. Diddy settled with him, giving him even more money. And P. Diddy's legal issues aren't just about fights, they also involve business stuff as well, where his brand Sean John was being sued for using slave labor. Where a case came out in 2003 where the company was using Honduran labor, but they said they were being kept there without any air condition, being kept against their will, and not being paid overtime. And there was proof that P. Diddy knew about what was going on and was being sued for it, and he didn't do anything until the press started to catch on to the story. So to get away from the charges, P. Diddy never actually compensated people for the unpaid labor, but he did agree to fire the managers and at the same time bring air conditioning to the factory. And even with the inception of Bad Boy Records, P. Diddy was also called out by his former partner Kirk Burroughs, with Kirk in 2003 saying he never wanted to sell his shares in the company to P. Diddy, but felt like he had to because P. Diddy was threatening to bring violence on him, making the claim that P. Diddy was telling him that he'd have assassins come after him and cut his throat if he didn't sell to him. And from there, the list of accusations involving physical crime and also business crime go on and on and on. He assaulted Rogelio Mills in 2005 and was charged but never punished. Gerard Ratchnicher accused him of battery in 2007. And in 2015, he was accused of assaulting his son's football coach because he benched his son. But for all of these cases, P. Diddy was able to get out each and every time because of money. He was able to afford amazing lawyers that no person can realistically beat. And P. Diddy realized his accusers would rather see themselves with lots of money than see him in jail, so he would end up just bribing everybody through settlements. And this strategy worked out for decades for him, but now it seems like the approach of just bribing people might be running out. And looking at the new wave of charges against P. Diddy and the new claims, it all comes down to one man, and that's Donald Trump. Because in the state of New York, for pretty much all of its history, the statute of limitations on sexual assault is 3 years, meaning if somebody comes forward on the 4th year, they don't get anything done. And Donald Trump does have multiple allegations against him going back to the 80s and 90s. So New York, being a little bit more of a left-wing state and wanting to see some punishment on Trump, had New York Governor Kathy Hochul sign a bill called the Adult Survivors Act, which changed the statute of limitations for anybody who was assaulted in the state of New York, meaning whatever year they were assaulted, they can come forward, but they only had 1 year to do so. And the goal was largely for Democrats to have some reason to go against Donald Trump, and while that might have not worked out so well, they did catch a lot of other people. Bill Cosby was sued by Joan Charces, saying she was assaulted in his limo in 1970 and also drugged. Harvey Weinstein was sued by Julie Ormond, saying she was assaulted by him in 1995. Russell Brand was sued by an extra in one of his movies in 2010 for exposing himself to her. Mike Tyson, who already went to jail for 3 years in the 90s for rape, had another accusation come against him. And there were many big names on the list, but to top it all off was P. Diddy, with the first one coming out as Cassie Ventura, saying that she was raped, assaulted, and trafficked by P. Diddy many times throughout her life. And she also dated rapper Kid Cudi, who had his car blown up, and she said P. Diddy took credit for it to her. And after that went public, the claims just kept on coming in, where 2 women who've remained unnamed came out saying P. Diddy raped them, but also one of them came out accusing him of revenge porn, saying in 1991 she was assaulted by both P. Diddy and Aaron Hall, and P. Diddy filmed the whole thing and held the video against her. The 4th claim came from a woman in 2003 saying P. Diddy raped her when she was 17 years old. And it goes past just women, where Little Rod Jones came out saying he was assaulted by P. Diddy and also at the same time groomed by him when he was just a teenager, saying P. Diddy drugged him, assaulted him, at the same time also forced him to work with other prostitutes. And because of that claim, the federal government has gotten involved, where it has come out that P. Diddy has had all of his properties raided by the federal government, where they are looking for evidence into Little Rod's claims. And the feds aren't giving that much details, but there is a lawsuit involving Little Rod that's going on involving human trafficking, and many names like Cuba Gooding Jr. and even Prince Harry are involved on his list. So all this makes it very likely that P. Diddy will get some sort of jail time, but the big question is how much, if any. And figuring out how long P. Diddy is going to go to jail for, it's actually pretty simple, where for rape in New York, the minimum is 5 years and the max is 25 years. And then because one person here is a minor being 17 years old, there's also statutory rape, which would give an additional 7 years. And then there's also claims of human trafficking, which if P. Diddy was doing it across state lines, that would be an additional 20 years in prison in federal. So P. Diddy, being a 54-year-old man, could be looking at spending the rest of his life behind bars, but there is the reality that he's a billionaire and he's also P. Diddy. And that's because looking at P. Diddy's past, he's had so many lawsuits where he would be looking at 1 to 5 years in jail, but he was able to every single time just bribe his way out of it. Where his strategy's always been that he just hires a lawyer that charges $1,000 an hour, and at the same time he'll just settle, giving people tons of money so they don't send him to prison. And because P. Diddy's a billionaire, he could realistically give every single accuser $10 million and have each one of them have their cases just disappear. And that's sadly probably going to be what happens here, with the only tricky one being the federal charges, which do involve human trafficking. And even that he can probably get watered down quite a bit, where 20 years could easily become 1 to 2 years. And P. Diddy sadly points out a huge problem with the legal system, where money simply buys freedom. And that's the sad world we live in, but with that, I'm Charles Peralo. Subscribe if you learned something.